Good morning, everybody. We are elated to have you and really pleased to see you come and join us today. I am Mark Friedman. I'm the project director for Technology for All. And today we're going to hear from my wonderful colleague and friend of many years, Tom Keating, who is the founder and CEO of Cognitopia, and we'll be talking about how apps can help different people to be more independent and also to be able to do things on the internet and be able to do things around jobs. And you'll be hearing all of these from Tom in just a moment. I have just a few housekeeping pieces to cover. We've muted everybody. Tom will be having questions at the end. If you put them in a chat box, that would be really helpful to make sure that Tom gets them, and Tom will stop along the way to make sure any questions that he's covered. There is closed captioning. You just click on the bottom. We like when people are on your webcam. It helps the presenters, Tom and myself, to be able to see people. So we appreciate that. There is the captioning that's done. There's a clip at the bottom you'll see for anybody who wants to be able to use that. You just click on that, and it is all through artificial intelligence, but it's working very successfully for most people at this time. We are funded by the Pennsylvania Developmental Disabilities Council, and we appreciate their support and help. Now we're going to hear from Tom. Tom is the founder and director of Cognitopia and is actually in the West Coast of Washington and comes live with us through Zoom. And we are just really elated. Thank you, Tom, a million for coming and being with us and sharing all the exciting things that you're doing. Tom, you're on.
Thanks, Mark. Just share my screen here and we'll get going. So yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity. As Mark said, we've known each other for years. We kind of reconnected recently around some of the work that Mark was doing and found out all about these overlapping things that we've got in common, people and projects, and fundamentally an interest in technology and how that relates to self-determination and self-advocacy. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today on my take on that and some of the things we're doing here at Cognitopia. You can think in a nutshell of what Cognitopia is doing is we're developing user-facing applications to help people build a sense of self-determination and have the tools to be able to do that. And I'll basically that's what my whole presentation is going to be about, and I'll expand on that in different ways. I'm going to start by telling you a little story, and it revolves around this photo here. This is a picture of me and two of my brothers. We grew up in a large family in the Bronx, and we were the three middle sons. There are 8 boys and 2 girls in our family. That's me in the middle and in a much less hair challenged era. And my next youngest brother on the left with a bottle of whiskey in his hand, and my brother James with a gun in his hand pointed at my head. And that's not accidental, because the photographer who took the photo knew our story. And our story was that James, we grew up all together. James grew up with autism. He was the 6th in our family, and I was the 4th. And the 3 of us were always a unit in our large family. Well, in the 1980s, I decided I was going to, 1970s, I decided I was going to move from the Bronx to Eugene, Oregon to go to school and see what the Wild West looked like. And I ended up staying there. So that's where I'm coming to you today, is from Eugene, Oregon, bright and early here on the West Coast. And after I was out living in Eugene for a couple of years, my other brother, Francis, the one on the left in that photo, came out and he started living there too. James was like, hey, we're kind of a team. Like, what am I? Chopped liver. I want to move to Oregon too. When I would call home on the phone, he would say exactly that. He said, when am I going to be moving to Eugene? And I was like, oh, James, I don't know. That's kind of hard. I'm in school. I've got a lot going on. But he kept at it. And then in the early 80s, I finally broached the topic with my parents and said, hey, what would you think if James moved to Oregon to live with me and Francis? And it took a whole summer for them to wrap their heads around that. But finally they did. We approached it as an experiment that like, hey, let's have James come and live with us for a while. And the experiment ended up lasting 31 years. So I became James's primary caregiver, his support person, his skill trainer. And this was in the 1980s when personal computers were just really starting to percolate. And 1984 was the year that Macintoshes came out. And that was a huge thing at the time because it was a huge leap in usability for computing technology. And so one of the things I did as in trying to support James was budgeting. And we would budget on pencil and paper every week to plan his week. And he would want to spend all kinds of money that he didn't have. And when I had to tell him, hey, you don't have that money, he didn't like it. And it created a very tense, angry situation between us. And then I was interested in technology and we started using the Mac in an early version of a spreadsheet. And James had good numeracy and some basic literacy ability. So he would put his numbers in the spreadsheet and I created a little column of nonsense characters that went up and down depending on how much money he was budgeting. And when it went to zero, I could point to the computer and say, hey, James, look, the computer says you don't have any money left. And he took the news from the computer a lot better than he took it from me. And so a couple of light bulbs went on in my head. One is that we were not really just doing budgeting, we were planning. He was telling me what he wanted to do, and I was trying to help him figure out how he was going to be able to do that. And we would talk about not just money, but transportation and companionship and what he needed to be able to do the things he wanted to do. And when I realized that, you know, this computer, this early experiment in using computers was helping him be more independent and help me be a better caregiver, I decided I was going to start writing grants to the federal government to try and get funding to explore this area. I was a master's student at the time, and they didn't give me any money as a master's student, but I got my degree at the University of Oregon, my PhD, and then I started getting grants funded. But a couple of things were at the heart of it. One of was that a lot of us would much rather be told what to do by devices or systems that we control rather than by other people. You think about getting up in the morning, right? You got to get up. I had to get up at 5 o'clock this morning to be ready for this. So, you know, do I want my mother or my wife or my drill sergeant coming in and waking me up? Or do I want my alarm set to Ocean Breezes or NPR or AC/DC or whatever's going to help me get out of bed? The latter, obviously. I have to get up at the same time, regardless of what my waking mechanism or system is, but I get to control it one way and I don't get to control it the other. So when you increase autonomy, you decrease coercion. And that's what happened for me and my brother. And when we started using the technology, he had more control and he felt less controlled by me. And that was a big thing for him. So for me, self-management and technology is all about control. It's giving people control of their world, but it's also a key to accomplishment. And I think we kind of underestimate how important it is to be able to understand and track your accomplishments. So if you look at this image here, you can take a second and think about what it says. It's a Gary Larson cartoon, so it's inherently funny, right? You have a dinosaur, and he's managing his daily calendar, his to-do list. He's tracking his accomplishments, if you will. And it says the same thing every day. It says, kill something and eat it. And he's doing really well at that, right? And we know that a couple of ways because the days are all crossed out. He's got a great streak going. And he doesn't look like a skinny dinosaur, so he's eating pretty well. We know that. It kind of looks like a smile to me. He seems happy. I think he's happy at his accomplishments. He's happy at being able to track them. And he's got a pencil in his hand, and there's no images on that calendar, so he can read and he can write as well. He can write at least to write that sentence and cross it out. So there's a lot of information in there, but what it comes down to for me is that when you think about accomplishment, you can think about to-do lists, right? And how important it is. We all have to-do lists. Some of us have many of them on your phone, on your computer, a set of Post-it notes, some index cards in your pocket. I'm describing myself, by the way. I have all these systems for remembering things that I want to accomplish. And I'm one of those people, and there's probably nobody else on this call like this, but I'm one of those people who, if I do something that's not on one of my lists, I go back and add it to it just so I can check it off and get that sense of accomplishment. And that is so, okay, I see Mark raised his hand there. There are probably some others, right? And the reason for that is biochemical, right? When you do that, when you accomplish things and when you track them, you get a little bling in your head, a little dopamine hit. And if there's a biochemist on the call, you can correct me if I'm using the wrong chemical name, but I believe that's what it is. You get a dopamine hit, and it's reinforcing and it feels good. So I think it's really important to understand how we all use these things, how we all use technology to control and accessorize our world, and how we track our accomplishments and our achievements, and how we reach our goals. So now I'm going to give you a brief exercise to do, okay? And I want you to think about your morning routine this morning, and how many different technologies you used from the time you like opened your eyes, or maybe even before you opened your eyes. How do they compensate for your limitations, your preferences, and your quirks? How do they let you express yourself and exert personal preferences and environmental control? And would you want it to be any different if suddenly dependent on others to make it happen? So think about it. Let's take like maybe 10 or 20 seconds. Just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think about your morning so far and how many different technologies you've used. Okay, now if we were in this all in the same cool room together, I might call on someone. Maybe I'd call on Mark and ask him to report in, but I'm not going to do that because I'm a nice guy. I'm going to just kind of say, this is Tom's morning tech. Okay. So these are all things I can think about that I use, and there's probably some I've missed. But even before I wake, I have it was 25 degrees in Eugene this morning. We had unusually cold weather, and I was really grateful I had an automatic heating and cooling system to make my house ready for me when I got up. I have an alarm clock, lots of options, as I talked about before. I usually set 2 alarms because I'm cautious, and we got snooze ability with that, and that's a preference. I like hitting that snooze button sometimes. I have a coffee pot, and it makes a noise. It gurgles when it's done with its cycle. Okay, so that's how I know it's safe to get out of bed. Okay, I don't even put on my glasses till I hear the gurgle of the coffee pot. And if I think about it, that smell is already wafted into the room, and it's probably primed me in ways I don't even understand. My sort of animal brain smells that coffee, and it's like, okay, it's safe to get up. So I get up and I get my coffee. I can pour it myself. I'm fortunate that way. Uh, I also like to know if the paper's been delivered. That's my other kind of requirement for the morning. I'm still one of those people who gets a paper delivered to their house, believe it or not. And they used to deliver it right to the door, and I had a sensor that would tell me if someone had appeared on the doorstep, around 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I would know the paper had been delivered. And now they just throw it into the bushes, so I can't do that anymore. So I just have to look out the window. I've got a weather station, and I got my phone to tell me what's going on out there in the world. I've got uh, lots of personal care things, a back scratcher, toothbrush, shaver, all of these things that I am fortunate enough to have the motor ability to use. I've got a shower with handles I can manipulate, and a nice toilet and an anti-scald feature on my shower. I've got faucet handles I can use, a dresser with accessible knobs and a mirror at the right height. I can make my toast done just the way I like. I have lots of ways, as I already said, about remembering what I'm doing today, multiple backup systems of computer, phone, index cards, all kinds of things. And then when I leave for work, I can open the door, I can get in the car or on the bus or on my bike, or I can just go downstairs to my home office if that's what I'm doing. I came downtown today. So those are all technologies that, not high technology, not all of it, a few things in there. But I think it's really good to think about that and then think about like if I was suddenly dependent on others to make it happen, you know, I wouldn't want it to be any different. Uh, but I'd have to think about how I'm going to communicate my needs, my preferences, my goals and my aspirations, right? Um, you know, um, Richard Pryor, a famous comedian who, some of you may be familiar with, had a self-inflicted burning accident, which left him uh, 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 quite disabled. And when people asked him what was the hardest thing about that, he said it was being dependent on other people. It was from going from being this like world famous comedian to being completely dependent on other people because of the severe nature of his burns. And that's an important thing to understand. So for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, you know, all of those things are true, but cognitive assistive technologies, which can help with communicating preferences, with controlling your world, with exerting your preferences and communicating them to other people. Cognitive assistive technologies are often not embraced in the same way that other assistive technologies are understood, and most importantly, are funded. So lots of people understand that like augmentative communication and screen readers, computer access, all things like that are assistive technology. And those all solve physical access problems, right? Or sensory problems. But what I like to call cognitive curb cuts are just as important as physical curb cuts. So everybody understands what do I mean by that. So physical curb cuts, as many of you know, is the premier example of universal design in the built environment. That, there are young people today, I'm sure, who don't even realize that curb cuts were put in for wheelchairs originally, and not for baby strollers or skateboarders or delivery men or bicycles or people who have trouble lifting a leg to get up onto a curb. But that's why it's the poster child for universal design, because it accomplished all of that. And we need to start thinking about cognitive curb cuts in the same way, and they're all around us. The opportunities are all around us, and some of them are already implemented. If you look at the dashboard on your car, next to the fuel gauge, you'll see a little arrow that tells you which side of the car your fuel gauge is on. That's a cognitive aid, right? That's a memory aid. Where do I pull into the pump to make sure I have easy access to the hose? Think about a non-example of universal design in the cognitive ability, and it's kind of a combination, really. It's the standard USB sticks and plugs. They only go in one way, and 50%, it seems like more than 50% of the time, you try it the wrong way, and you have to flip it around and do it the right way. And now that's fading away, and there are new connectors that no matter how you put them in there, it's the right way. That's design. That's a great design. And it's a great combination. It really emphasizes cognitive design because you don't have to think about putting your USB connector into your computer or wherever you're going to put it. And by the way, most of us are going to have a cognitive disability if we're lucky to live long enough. Hate to break it for to those of us who are even distantly approaching the age of 85, but if you make it that far, you have a 50% chance of having a serious cognitive deficit after that point. So we need to design the world in a better way, and we need better tools that help people control their world, because the problem is that there's lots of emphasis right now on self-determination and person-centered planning and services, lots of assessments and curricula out there to teach about this or theoretically say how self-determined a person is, but there's not enough user-facing tools that enable students and adults to actually do the things that build a sense of self-determination, to have a to-do list, to have goals, to track goals, to have a support for task accomplishment that lets people be more independent. And none of that starts early enough. So typically the light bulb about self-advocacy goes on in high school for people. It's like, oh no, they're graduating. They need to develop some self-advocacy skills. And I must say it's too late at that point, but that should start in preschool. Okay. Kids should be managing their own schedules. When they're in elementary school, they should be going to their IEPs, being part of that process, given a role, because then it's understood. Then it's a given. All those things that take place over time, you can't develop that overnight once people are in school. So that's our mission at Cognitopia. It's developing those tools to build independence, self-determination, transition support, and lifelong success for individuals with autism, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and other cognitive challenges. And really, I mean, I hate to even break it down that way, because as I'm sure there's no bright line uh, of cutoff for cognitive ability, right? We've established some for eligibility for services, but there are lots of people who need help with self-management and executive functioning, and that includes everybody on this call, right? And that's why we have smartphones that help keep us organized, and other kinds of tools and systems to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about what we're actually doing, the nuts and bolts of Cognitopia. And what it is a suite of visually focused and web-based self-management applications. So web-based in that you don't download it from the App Store. You just go to our website and you use the applications. So a lot of people say, "Oh, but you can't download it from the App Store," and I'm like, "No, but there's a big plus in that you can use it on anything from a $50 tablet from Walmart up to the nicest computer or iPad you can find. It doesn't matter. Whatever operating system, whatever browser, you can use it. There are a lot of people who use, a lot of students who use Chromebooks in school. And so, web-based applications are really important for them. So it's about independence, but it's also about team coordination. We have tools that help people manage their own goals and ISPs and IEPs, but we have ways for people on their support teams and other people they're connected to help them in succeeding. There are ways you can use it as a virtual training tool, and I'll show some examples of that. There are lots of ways for people to be helpful in a remote coaching sense, so you can kind of check in with people and see how they're doing without needing to actually be there. And this whole idea of transition is so important. When we got federal research and development grants to support this work, for which we're enormously grateful. And if I don't have it in these slide decks somewhere, in particular, NIDLA, the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research, has been really helpful to us in that regard. And one of the projects that we got was to help transition age students make a better transition to adulthood, and keep the information that they developed in their educational plans, and make sure that was available to their supporters in the adult world. And so that was the use case. That was for students with autism and intellectual disabilities in the transition age bracket. But what we realize is that transition is everywhere. It's grade to grade, from the earliest grades. It's school level to school level. And then when you get into the adult world, there's so much turnover in the labor force of direct support professionals that there's lots of transition there, and people are constantly dealing with new people. So if you've got a toolkit that says, here's how I learn, here's how I manage myself, and here's how you can help me, then that's a really important thing to help with transition in those situations as well. So we've got 3 tools on the platform right now, and we have more in development. But right now we have My Life, which is a digital portfolio for self-direction and training. Can be used for IEP or ISP self-direction, person-centered planning. There's lots of examples of that, and we'll go through that as well. Routines is a tool for multimedia task analysis. You can build step-by-step instructions for accomplishing tasks and use video and images and text. And any of those routines can be accessed either through the software navigation or directly by scanning the QR code. And I'll show you some examples of that as well. And then Goal Guide also gives task analysis support for accomplishing goals. But goals are things that you want to schedule and get reminders about and take data on and have that data be available to other people who are helping you accomplish your goals. So that's what distinguishes Goal Guide. So let's just again, the goal here is a seamless transition from K-12. And as I said before that, I think young kids can use self-management applications. Doesn't have to be Cognitopia, but something that's helping them be more independent and less dependent on prompts from parents and teachers. Talked about transition barriers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over to my browser here, and we're going to look at a series of portfolios that illustrate how some of this plays out here. So let me that. So this is Ethan's portfolio. Ethan's a middle school student. This is the My Life tool, and it began as a tool for IEP self-direction. So you see all these things, strengths, interests, they're all customizable. What works for me in an IEP would probably be called preferences. What doesn't work, that was needs, and he and his mom changed it. He was transitioning from elementary school to middle school. And so they said to his IEP team, say, hey, we want you to know who Ethan is coming out of the gate. Okay, so he created this set of images, a drawing that he did, things that he liked. He likes to draw and paint. So he created some images and products in there that helps that team know who he is and what he likes to do. Oops, one step back there. Yeah. So if we go back up to the top level of his portfolio, then we can see, how does he communicate his strengths? One of the things we're trying to do is really give an opportunity for people to get their story out there and tell people who they are. So he said, here are some cool things to know about me. He has a great personality. He's determined. He's a strong self-advocate. He likes technology here. He's got a picture he put of him and and a friend of his visiting pumpkin patch and some other cool things in there. So you see what's happening here is what they did is they created this and they gave it in advance to everybody on the IEP team. And they said, hey, this is Ethan, and here's what works for me, and he could take control of this in that meeting and walk through it and talk to people about it. There are little helpers here. There's a speaker, so you can speak any of this text that's in there. He happens to be a pretty print literate young guy. But there are some really important things in here, some very general things, presuming I can do something rather than I cannot do something. That's pretty basic teaching skill. Another one here, I like to transition with an object. That's not true for everyone, but for him it's important, and that's important for people to know about him. So all of these things come together. Well, and importantly, what doesn't work too, right? The opposite, people who don't presume competence, not having choices or warnings before transitions, there's lots of really helpful things in here. But more importantly, and we have parents and individuals now starting to do this in advance of IEP and ISP meetings and having their portfolio, giving it ahead of time and saying, hey, here's who I am, and let me tell you who I am, rather than taking the time during the meeting and then I can answer any questions for it. So that's one example there. This, moving along, this is more of a transition student, and his material has very much an employment focus. He's got a big picture, a background picture that he picked which is some sort of cool and impressive machinery. And then when we go into his interests, what do we, find out? Oh, he likes making models. Great, and he likes he's got a vocational interest assessment in here. You talk about someone sharing a hobby like making models, they may not even realize how important that is from the perspective of a job developer who can look at that and say, wow, there's like a dozen transferable skills for employment in there. Ability to focus, detail, fine motor ability, all kinds of things like that. You can have you make it really easy to put web links in and click to other places. And by the way, everything I'm showing you is totally non-technical, point and click, easy to do. Really interested in trains and technology. He's thinking about working in a restaurant, so he's looking at like videos on how to use a commercial dishwasher and wanting to be ready for that. He's a Willie Nelson fan, so he's got a little video in here on that. And one of the things we emphasize to people is that, your portfolio is you telling your story. It's you taking control of your story. So what do you want people to know about you? And if they know these things about you, then that gives them points of connection, and it can completely transform an IEP or an ISP meeting from a potentially fractious, intense kind of interaction to something completely different. The other thing you can do in portfolios is you can showcase your goals. Now, there's a separate part of the program called Goal Guide where you actually create your goals, but you can choose to share them and feature them in your portfolio. So he was working on not getting distracted when in a work site. So he was showing that he improved in that. He had a job doing a painting apprenticeship, and he was showing some data on how much time he could work, how many hours in a row. If he needs a reminder about the steps of doing that job, he can have this routine easily available. And again, as I mentioned, with routines, you can show video at any step to help with accomplishment. And having this in his portfolio also communicates to other people who are looking at it, hey, I can do this job because I've got data. And you could track punctuality, you could track whatever you want, but then it becomes something that you can actually kind of use to underscore your match, your ability to do the job, and also that you've got tools like routines that are going to help you do that job. Okay. Now, if we go, we're going to keep moving along here. This is another example. You can use a portfolio in a lot of ways. This guy, I'll give you one guess what this guy wanted to do as his post-secondary employment goal, and he wanted to work in a food truck. So he and his teacher put together a little video, which is him. Okay.
Tried to amend my carnivorous habits. Made it nearly 70 days.
Okay, we don't need to watch the whole video, but they really enjoyed making this video. It shows that what he's learned in school and at home to improve his cooking skills. And he can share this. He can share it with a job developer. He can share it with an employer. He actually did share it with a job developer. His family moved to Orlando, Florida, and the job developer there got him work at a Cracker Barrel, not a food truck. And as it turns out, food truck is no longer what he wants to do. He lives in Orlando and he works in food services. So he wants to work at Disney World. And so he needs to change his background picture to Disney World and update some of his information in here. But he's on his way. Moving into adulthood. Okay, this is a guy, in his 20s with a 4-year college degree. He's autistic, and he has mad skills, 4-year college degree, but he has a really hard time interviewing for jobs. So he kind of added a video resume kind of element to his portfolio.
Hello there, my name is Brendan A. Fork. I am here to give you my introduction to my resume portfolio and I'm using this as an opportunity to showcase some of my previous accomplishments and experiences.
Okay, so you get the idea. Again, he can share this with anybody he wants, job developer, potential employer. He's super eloquent, super accomplished, just has a hard time with the interview process. And corporations, employers, I think at all levels, are beginning to realize that they're really hurting themselves by screening out good people and talent through interview mechanisms that don't work for everybody across the board. So I think we're seeing more openness to people being willing to consider these kinds of things. So what I just showed you are all examples of individual portfolios. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of training portfolios, of ways to use a portfolio to deliver information in a more universally designed way. And we really this really came to fruition through some work we're doing with CVS Health. And you may or may not know it. If you don't know it and you have CVS in your living area, it's worth knowing about. They have a hugely ambitious program of diversity and equity and inclusion in their hiring, and it includes people with autism and intellectual disabilities. They have programs for inner city kids. They have people with second chance employees. They have all kinds of threads where they're trying to expand their talent pool and just reach out to more disenfranchised populations. And so we ended up developing a relationship with them. They saw what we're doing and thought it could help their training programs. And they gave us a pilot project at Tennessee Rehabilitation Center in Smyrna, just outside of Nashville. And these are some of the things that we came up with for them. I should say also that, that program at Tennessee Rehabilitation Center is now just full on taking the bull by the horns. They now have they run like a community college, and now they have a term-long sequence in Cognitopia that they have all their students do, and they learn how to use these tools for self-management and whatever employment training track they're on. But two of those tracks are related to working in CBS or a CBS kind of environment. There's no requirement or stipulation that people who go through this training work in a CVS store, but you can either train as a store clerk, a store associate, or as a pharmacy technician assistant. And so, we took a lot of the information they used to train people, and we said, well, let's make it easier for the trainees and the trainers to do. So they have 3 key videos here that they show. A story of CVS, how important customer service is to their operation and their mission, and then the Abilities in Abundance program, which is the specific name of their hiring program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities within their overall, what they call workforce initiatives program. So you go there, you find out, you get that training and that exposure. And then there's all kinds of helpful things you can do with video modeling, so customer service, having it side by side. How do you help customers? How not to help customers, just as importantly. All this stuff, this is a huge thing for them, not surprisingly. They have, you can view a short PowerPoint. We help them create a task analysis of a social script for what people need to do under different circumstances. So you can watch a video about customer service, but then there are some things to do under different scenarios. What do you do if a customer is happy and satisfied? What do you do if they have a complaint? That gets a little more complex, obviously. And then what do you do if they're extremely upset? And fortunately for that one, what you do is you call your manager right away for assistance. They don't expect people to deal with that. But that whole idea of social scripts is so important, and I think we gloss over it. Sometimes everybody gets task analysis for functional tasks, but we need to be really explicit about social tasks and social scripts as well. So those are some of the things, and then there are functional analysis of all kinds of elements of using the register. And we're working on a project right now. They have a series of mock stores around the country that they provide for people to train in. And we're going to be using routines like these here. So you go to register training, and any of these things related to using the cash register, you can just click into and get the steps of doing it. And there's always a quick video, and then, a set of steps and images that help you focus on how to do that. And by the way, I think they kind of see that these kinds of things, as I was saying earlier, there's no bright line of ability where it changes from I have ability and I don't have ability. They see this as being useful for people, lots of people in their stores, regardless of their whether they carry a disability label or not. And then there's lots of these. All these categories are customizable. Tennessee Rehabilitation Center has their own curriculum in here. CVS has curriculum materials that are available on there as well. Now, one of their pharmacy technician students took that portfolio and said, well, I want my pharmacy technician goals and helpful information about pharmacy, being a pharmacy tech, and the routines for being a pharmacy tech in there. But I also want the register training. And it's really easy to take these things and say, give me a new portfolio with this, 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 and this. But it was really interesting. She also said, I want to know that I am going to be super prepared for work. Now, this is someone training to be a pharmacy technician assistant, right? And that's not a simple job. So she's a really capable person, but she was anxious about being ready to go to work and understanding and making sure she had everything dialed in. So she really liked the idea of having these routines that she could remember and rehearse. And, obviously someone who knows how to take a shower, but liked having the routine in there for that, and doing laundry. And these things help relieve her anxiety. And, it illustrates something really important about to-do lists and about routines. And that's that they have a real anxiety reducing function. So you think about going to the grocery store to get like 6 things. And you think, that's right on the edge. I could probably remember all those things, but if I make a list, I don't have to worry about it. And I can refer to it if I need to. But it reduces my anxiety about, feeling badly about myself because I forgot the most important thing I needed for dinner, or getting jumped on by the person who I was doing the shopping for because I forgot the most important thing I needed for dinner, and saves me the trouble of going back out and doing a second trip. So all of those things create potential anxiety, and you can reduce that. There are other ways to take this kind of information for training, and you can do it for things like pre-employment transition skills. So we worked with transition teachers in Oregon, actually pre-employment transition services deliverers through vocational rehabilitation, and said, they were looking for a way to train other people in delivering pre-ets. And so we helped them. We created a portfolio. You can go into any of these categories and get more information. How do you document pre-ets? How do you request pre-ets? Different language forms that are easy to download. And because we're all about routines, there's a routine in there that gives you the steps. This is localized to Oregon, this one here, and these links, but super easy to change that for other people. But you can also go into, you can use this not only as a training portfolio, but for the people who are receiving the services. How do they understand what they're getting in the service? How do they track it? How do they carry it forward? So if I've got something like work readiness, do I want to know how to write an elevator pitch that shows where I can really simply tell other people what I want to do? If I go to a job fair, can I really quickly explain to people who I am, what I want to do, and why I would be a good employee for them? Am I looking at working in an office? What are some of the hidden rules about, working in an office environment? And those can all be important things. And then when you look at things like, job exploration, people get these services delivered to them, but they have no takeaway. It's like, okay, we went and we visited a greenhouse, but what's your takeaway? Are you able to comment on it? Do you like it? What's it like working in a greenhouse? Can you put a video in there and say, yeah, this is what it's like? And you know what? I don't like that because I don't like getting my fingers dirty, and I don't like sweeping up leaves all the time or whatever. Or maybe I do like getting my fingers dirty, so I like being an auto technician. One of our fundamental things is that people who are getting these services have to have a way of carrying it forward and making it part of their resume so that they can kind of communicate it to people in the future and who are in a position to help them get a job. I am gonna take first of all, I'm gonna take a short pause here before I show a video on how some of these self-directed portfolios get used. Does anybody have any questions? And I'm gonna rely on Toby, my colleague Toby Rickard, who by the way is on the call with us today to help monitor the chat. And I think Toby just visibilized himself there and give you a wave. And if not, I'll just go ahead and I'll show this short video here. This is a video, by the way, of one of the students we've worked with using My Life to take control of her IEP.
Be treated like, oh, I have a disability. I don't like that. Yeah, they judge me. Yeah.
But we talk about it a lot, like we're all going to need help with certain things.
Yeah.
No one walks around life without needing help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it's a smart thing to make use of people helping.
So my strengths are, I am a fun person to be around. I am hard at working, and my strength is also being independent. And my strength is also being with people. When I get a job, I want to be able to work with other people and do team projects. I like to travel. I want to travel to New York City. I want a paid job and work part-time. No, I prefer to work in the mornings. I like to work with a team. My next move is a test that we took for like what personality, like jobs I would do. And I got artistic. But I need a social security. I need to get connected with support agencies. Or like Franklin checks for understanding. Free teach skills concept. It means that I have to, like if I say, excuse me, can you say that again, that I can hear better. Mm-hmm. And then I prefer to sit in front of the class, so I can hear. And then I need to have, like my teachers have my speaker. And these are the trips that we've gone through, like we go every Thursday for the 8-hour class right now.
Which one did you like the best?
I like the album. Yeah, which way my I like my favorite of all time. My goals. My goal is to get into college math and reading. I want to get a job and be able to take the bus around. I want to rent an apartment in the future and live at a private area with stores and restaurants near me. I want to live with a couple of roommates. Yeah.
That was amazing.
Very nice.
Nice work.
So I'm gonna stop it there. It goes on for a little bit, but you get the idea that I think it's hard to overestimate how important it is for students to have a tool to articulate those things about themselves. And I say students because that student was a transition student, but it's anybody. You know, if you ask someone, what are your strengths? What are your preferences? It can be really hard to articulate those things in the moment, but having a chance to do it with media and then be able to use a tool to communicate it to other people uh, is really important. Okay, so we are gonna whiz back to my slideshow here. And I'm gonna show you actually, this is just an example here of how portfolios can be used for post-secondary education. We work with several Think College programs. I'm familiar with the Think College program, but it's an inclusive post-secondary education model. And some of them use a thing called the STAR person-centered planning system, and this portfolio has been customized to reflect the categories that are in that system. And this is what it would look like for a college student. I already talked about pre-employment transition. Another creative way that Tennessee Rehabilitation Center is using the portfolio is as a tool for campus navigation. So they've basically mapped the campus onto a portfolio. And then when you go into these categories, they have information about the different things you can do on campus and the routines for doing them while you're there. So not only do you know what's in the student union, but there's a routine for how to sign up for an outing, or how to use the bowling alley, or or what the cool spot for going and sitting and having a cup of coffee is, or where you can smoke a cigarette if you're a smoker. All those things that make an environment more accessible to folks as well. So those are all different ways that you can use the portfolio, the My Life portfolio, both as a tool for individual storytelling, and the story may be your IEP, ISP. It can be anything. We have students who start with a portfolio, for school or adults for independent living and employment, and then they make other portfolios. They make portfolios about their fascination with Marvel Universe characters, or anime, or video sound effects, or it can be whatever. And what we realize is that we've created a tool for personal expression and storytelling, and then once people get what they can do with it and how accessible it is, they take off with it and they do all kinds of cool things. So I'm going to switch now to routines and talk a little bit about how you can use routines in some cool ways. And I alluded very briefly earlier to the fact that you can use QR codes. So if anybody wants to, they can scan that QR code off the screen, and you'll get the routine for using this commercial dishwasher will show up on your phone or your tablet. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that if that code is on that device, or if I carry that code with me in a little wallet and I need a reminder about how to do that thing, all I got to do is scan the code, get the steps, and I'm independently reminding myself of how to use what I've done some volunteer work where I've had to learn how to use a commercial dishwasher, and they're kind of intimidating. They're hot and noisy and steamy. And so, it's really good. You want to make sure it can be intimidating. You've got the steps. All you need is a code, and you can get location specific task accomplishment assistance. These codes, or the routines and the codes that go with them, are super easy to share with people. So if you've got a routine like this in your collection and you want other people to have it, you click a couple of check boxes and you give it to them. And it's one of the huge advantages of doing these things in a digital world rather than an analog world, is that all the one-to-many capabilities that digital offers make it really easy to give to other people. Here's one that came from the experience working with CVS and stocking shelves. That code could be anywhere on the shelf. It could be something you carry. It could be in the break room before you go on duty. If you want to just really quickly review what you're doing, it could be something that a supervisor changes, like they put out different codes for the jobs that you're doing that day, and maybe you haven't done one of them in a while, so you want to review it. It's really powerful. Here's the one we looked at earlier, where you can use it for social scripting and branched kind of scenarios. Uh, uh, Work preparedness, how do you dress for an interview, or how do you dress for the particular job that you're doing? Independent living, so lots of really obvious applications there for cooking. Laundry is a great one, and this cuts across so many user groups. We have independent living programs now, who are doing, one in particular, they do a transitional progression of moving young adults with autism through different tiers of independent housing navigation. And now they have their environments kind of adorned with QR codes. So if you're in the kitchen, you might find a very nice and discreetly placed code that shows how to operate the dishwasher. Or if you're in the laundry room, there would be one on the laundry machine. So if you can't remember the complicated digital display panel or how much soap to use, you scan the code. We've had college dormitories use those. It's not where just like people coming from all over using a new machine and nobody getting that more soap is not always better. So, it just really helps like kind of systematize that. And then you think about how this kind of approach can be used not only for self-management, but also for support. So if you've got like in the world of adult services, someone who's getting supported might have like 4 or 5 different people interact with them in the course of a day, to support them in accomplishing different aspects of employment or independent living. And if all those people are using the same routines or codes or the same approach to support, then everybody's reading from the same playbook, and you get this fidelity of implementation in terms of the support that's being provided. So we've had people now, be interested from this quality assurance perspective that are they doing a good job of teaching people the same way? I'm sure we all know, folks, who have been taught the same thing over and over again because of high staff turnover, and the next person that comes in doesn't realize what their capabilities are, right? But if you have routines, if you have portfolios that precede that new person and say, hey, here's Tom, he can do this, 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 and this, and these are the things that he's working on, and then it gives you more information as a DSP to jump in there. So, you could think of all kinds of ways that, you can use this. What do you send to someone if you're running late? We talked about this tips in working in an office. What do you do in an emergency? This is huge, and there's a lot of talk about emergency preparedness in the air right now. So, like, what do you do if a pan catches fire on your stove? What do you do if your tub overflows? I mean, there's all kinds of things where if you can just remember, scan a code and get some information that you need, then it can be really important. We had one guy who had a code on his bus schedule booklet to remind him some of the etiquette of riding on a bus, like don't sing AC/DC songs really loud, because not everyone appreciates that. And that, in our little town of Eugene, Oregon, that will jeopardize your ridership access if you do that. So that was really important for him. So we talked about routines as a way to get information about how to accomplish tasks. And you can think of goals as, I want to accomplish tasks, but it's going to happen on a regular basis. So it's going to be repeated. I want to schedule it. I want to get reminders, and I want to have data that I can take on my progress. And we saw some of that data collection in the earlier example that I showed you for that John student transition portfolio, where he had data on his painting experience and his social skills accomplishments. Here we're seeing that, we're using that stocking shelves example, and we're getting a reminder on the phone. You can complete your goal from the phone. So it's saying how many shelves did you stock, and you can say, I did X number. The data goes back to your chart, and then that's available to you. And if you want it to be, it's available to other people on your team so that they can say, hey, things are going okay. You're moving along, or maybe, it's not working. So let me see if I can get in there and help you. So it's a way for job coaches and other people to not need to necessarily be on site to see how things are going. And it's not a remote monitoring kind of thing. It's just a way to share data and share progress data. Another example that shows how goals look in the goal application. There are collections of them that are in little tiles. So you might have restaurant work, and one of the things is practice preparing and grilling a burger, and you see the data that comes from that. This is interesting here because right here there's a little image that's hard to see in this at this scale, but it's a picture of the cooked hamburger, because you can set up a goal so that it requires you to take a picture of the completed state of the goal, whether it's a cleaned room or a cooked thing, or what have you. A made bed, and interestingly enough, that began as kind of an accountability mechanism. It's like, well, did you really complete the goal, or just click that you completed it? But it really turned out to be a cognitive accessibility feature, because, no surprise, people like taking pictures of their accomplishments. And when the picture becomes a data point on your chart, it's more meaningful than a little dot. So when you click on that, it would blow up into the full image that shows you what you've done. So it was, it was kind of a nice twofer we got out of that. Definitely, lots of applications, in daily living as well. I'm gonna, let's see, how are we doing for time here? I can't see my clock. Okay, we're doing okay. I'm gonna show another video here that shows how one of the programs that we work with here in our area uses goals in this way to help with independent living.
Hi, I'm Todd. Welcome to one of 5 CELIA houses in Eugene, Oregon. CELIA stands for Smart Living, Learning, and Earning with Autism. Come on in and learn more about our mission. Casey is a student resident with the CELIA Training and Assessment Program, or TAP. TAP is a live-in training program designed for adults with autism who are moving out on their own for the first time. CELIA's smart homes are fitted with assistive technology for queuing, self-management, and organization. Every CELIA student has their own user account on the Cognitopia platform, a suite of web-based self-management applications for individuals with cognitive disabilities. As Casey's TAP manager, I've created a series of goals for him for meal planning, cooking, budgeting, healthy living, cleaning, and home maintenance, even shopping, community inclusion, and transportation. This week, it's Casey's turn to clean the house kitchen, and he's just received a reminder on his smartphone. Because Cognitopia is web-based, Casey can access his account on any device connected to data or Wi-Fi. I've mounted a tablet on the kitchen wall so that Casey can easily log into his Cognitopia account. First up is washing dishes. If Casey needs a reminder of the steps required to wash the dishes, he can scan the QR code on the wall next to the sink. Scanning the QR code opens up a routine with videos and photos that serve as a visual reminder of the steps necessary in order to complete the activity. Casey works his way through the cleaning kitchen goal, sweeping the floor, wiping the table, and shaking out the rugs. Each time he completes a task, he taps the iPad and a data point is recorded in the Goal Guide app in the Goal Progress window. Because I'm on Casey's support team, I can track the level of assistance he needs for each task. This helps me track Casey's self-determination and report back on his behavior and progress as he lives in the TAP house for the year. This information also helps me adjust the services and training that are individually designed based on Casey's needs. For more information on CELIA, visit celia.org. To learn more about the Cognitopia platform for self-determination, visit cognitopia.com.
Okay. Thanks to our partners at Celia. Really, really great program, really tech forward. They're always looking for, solutions. How can they support people? And they use lots of technology besides Cognitopia in their programs. And and one of the questions I often ask people is like, it's hard doing this stuff. It's hard supporting people to develop the skills for independent living. It's hard getting people jobs. You know, why would you not want to send them out there with the best possible tools that they can find to help them be more successful? And I think it goes back to that point I was making earlier that, we're still, for cognitive assistive technologies, we're kind of still in early days. It's like not everybody understands it, and we've got to educate people on it. There's some great work I know being done in places like Tennessee with enabling technologies, from remote support on down. So, it's not universal, but I think there's still a lot of education that needs to happen out there to give people the tools they need. So we just saw an illustration of how, some of these tools provide this capacity for remote coaching and support. And Todd, the narrator of that video, I think illustrated that pretty well. So, there are other ways to do that. There's a team chat that's available to everybody who's on a person's team, including the individual themselves. There is that ability to share data on progress. And there's some cool things that happen when you're connected to people and they're adding information to their portfolio that shows up in a feed for you as someone who's connected to them in real time. And a lot of that connection and coordination happens through something called a support hub. So if I'm an individual supporting any number of people, in this case, Pam is supporting 4 people, and one of them is our example, John, student, then there's that team chat that I talked about in there. There's a list of everybody on the team. There's a way to do some goal analysis of goal data. There's really importantly, there's a way to reach in and assist people directly if they're stuck and they need help, or they have a password that needs to be reset. All of those little things that create friction and make it difficult for people to be more independent. They get stuck or bottlenecked in different ways. And then there are ways to throttle sharing, for younger people. They may not understand the implications of sharing their information or their portfolios with other people, so you can limit it to just sharing with team members. And as you get older, you need to be able to just share things with employers and other people who you may not be connected to, so you can enable full sharing as well. I don't have it in here because it's so new. I haven't had a chance to get it in here, but we also have a new feature on the application that will let you enable an artificial intelligence feature called Cognibot, where you can ask it to create a routine for you. So you don't have to task analyze the steps of accomplishing something. It will do it for you. And as we all know, with ChatGPT or other AI platforms, it may not be perfect. You may need to tweak it, but it can save a lot of work. And it's really an accessibility feature for anybody who's doesn't have a facility for breaking things down into steps and itemizing them. So that's a really cool thing, and that we're doing as well. This technology is being used in all kinds of different ways now. In health self-management, we've got projects to help people with managing oral health better and creating training portfolios with goals and routines that, go over all the important features or the aspects of oral health. We're working on type 2 diabetes. Both oral health and type 2 diabetes are 2 things that are prevalent at much higher rates among people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So there's a real need for people to have a better understanding of how to self-manage, how to approximate a healthy lifestyle, and to have goals and routines that help you get there, and then with universally designed ways of getting that information as well. We also have had a need to use the portfolio as an accessible event management system. So this was right before COVID descended in fall of 2019. We did a student transition summit, and we had this portfolio here, which gave people who were attending the conference a way to understand in advance what it was about, to preview the industry tours they were going to be doing, to get a sense of who would be there. All the helpers, the people who were staffing the thing, put like a cool image, and they put a one-page profile in there too that made it really easy to see everybody who was gonna be there. There were all kinds of other features in here to give people more of an accessible way to understand what they were going to be doing in this beautiful place called Hood River, Oregon, that you see in the background there, and things to do complete prior to attending. So there are lots of ways to use this portfolio in that ways. We've used it for job fairs and virtual transition things where you populate all of these categories with the content of the providers of these services, and instead of going to a high school cafeteria to get this information, you can cruise around this portfolio, start here, and then go into any of these individual live chat sessions with any of those folks that you want. This was hugely successful during COVID, and it's continued after COVID because they got such better turnout from the virtual event than they did from the in-person events that they used to do as well. And there's a role for both of those things for sure, but there's definitely a role for hybrid versions of these things. So just summing all of this up, it's about being person-centered and strength-based, putting individuals at the center, and really, as early as possible in someone's life, helping them build self-advocacy. It's giving them a way to tell their story and to have other people contribute to that, to have people on the support team say, hey, I looked at your strengths. You're really good at this other thing over here, and I don't see that in there. You should add that in there. So it can be a very team coordinated kind of a process. I talked about seamless transition. One important thing, is that we had a commitment as part of the grant funding that helped us build this, that users keep access even if their license expires. So if a student graduates school and they've got all these great portfolios about who they are and what they do and how they learn, they keep that after they graduate. And it's really different. Doing that is really different. Usually when a student graduates school, if they're using Google Classroom, that's gone. Anything they had in there no longer exists. It's not their account. With Cognitopia, you keep your account ongoing. And then we're continually innovating to try and improve things. I've always loved this quote. I used to attribute it to John Kemp, a prominent disability rights and advocacy attorney. Mark Friedman taught me the errors of my ways, because he has it in he may or may not have noticed it, but it's in his email signature, and it's attributed, the first occurrence, apparently IBM, but for people without disabilities, technology makes things easier. People with disabilities, technology makes it possible.